Fantastic to be here. Very grateful just to be part of this beautiful celebration. As Sheila mentioned, I'm the founder of Mary's Meals. It's a work I'm not qualified to do, something I never planned, even after all these years. I'm a salmon farmer from the Highlands of Scotland. I never ever expected to be doing this with my life. But I'm very glad I am, very grateful to God. Ours is a very, very simple work. It's, as Sheila mentioned, it's about providing daily meals for the world's poorest children, always in places of education. So we meet their immediate need for food, but at the same time we enable them to come to school where they can gain that education that can set them free, can enable them to grow, to become the people God meant them to be. It's a work that's grown from small beginnings in 2002 when we began feeding about 200 children in Malawi, to the point today where over 1.25 million children eat Mary's Meals every school day in many different countries in the developing world. It's something that never ceases to amaze me, something that just consists of lots and lots of little acts of love. None of us doing anything spectacular in our own right. Lots of little sacrifices and gifts from the people who make the donations and fundraise, many volunteers here today, for example, through to those amazing people in the communities where we serve the meals, people who are living in great poverty themselves, who choose to give their time so that the children in their communities might eat. And it's a work that we're happy to do in the name of our Blessed Mother. We give her this work. We ask her how to do this work in a way that might always honour her, in a way that might always point to her Son, Jesus. I always think of Mary's Meals as a fruit of prayer and in a particular way linked to the Eucharist. About 30 years before this work of charity was ever unexpectedly born, my mum and dad, after a family pilgrimage to Medjugorje, made a decision to turn our home, it was a little guest house, into a Catholic retreat centre. It became Craig Lodge Family House of Prayer. It was a pretty crazy decision, actually. They just opened the doors and invited people to come, but it was a decision that was blessed in many ways and still is. Not long after they made that decision, our bishop in Argyll in the Isles gave them permission to have the Blessed Sacrament in our house, in the room that became our chapel. And over the coming years, a community formed around that centre of all the activity there, where the Eucharist was. People spending time every day in prayer, celebrating Mass there, saying countless rosaries there, singing praise in that chapel, spending time in silent adoration. Lots of different kinds of people, family and friends and people who came on retreat from many different parts of the world. And it was almost exactly 10 years after that began, that house of prayer, that this work of Mary's Meals was unexpectedly born. First of all, just through a small effort we made to bring aid to people who were suffering in Bosnia at that time, refugees, an effort that was meant to just be a one-off. I just took 1 week's holiday from the fish farm to do it, not expecting it to become anything else. And I do believe that those years of prayer before, in front of our Lord in the Eucharist, is linked in some way to the unexpected birth of this mission, a mission that no one really planned. And I see that in my life over and over again, how things change when people spend time adoring our Lord in the Eucharist, how unexpected, wonderful things happen. I see also over and over again how many of the people who are at the forefront of this mission of ours, working in very difficult places, in very challenging places, places of great suffering often, that so often they're people of the Eucharist, they're people who find their strength there. Just one of those people I'd like to mention today is a good friend of mine called Father Tom. He's an American priest and who's made his home in Haiti. He works in a slum called Cité Soleil, where about 500,000 people live on what was a rubbish dump. No sanitation, no running water, no health care. It's a place run by armed gangs, a place of terrible violence. Just to give you an idea, a couple of years ago, in the space of 12 months, 20 members of Father Tom's Haitian team were murdered in separate incidents. On more than one occasion, Father Tom's had a gun held to his head. But he's a man of great joy, of great peace. He has a wicked sense of humour. He's a man who spends a lot of time every day in front of the Blessed Sacrament. I was with him in 2010, just after the earthquake happened, and we were sleeping, a number of us, in the rubble of his courtyard. His house had collapsed, and I hadn't been with him at that point, and he'd escaped with minor injuries, and 2 of the seminarians who lived with him were killed. And in the days after, he was telling me about the awful hours after that earthquake. He was telling me how there was this terrible panic, this terrible sense of confusion and trauma. And he said to me he felt ashamed because people were looking to him for leadership, and he said he didn't know what to do. And at one point he said, why don't we go and see the Mother Teresa sisters, the missionaries of charity, who live on the same street as him. I've been often in the mornings with Father Tom when he goes to say Mass for them in the mornings. And so they went through the horror of what was happening in the streets of Port-au-Prince. So many people had died there. And Father Tom said when they opened the gates and went into the courtyard of the sisters, it was like entering another world. The sisters were going about their business calmly. The dead were laid in one part of the courtyard. The sick and injured were being tended for calmly in another part. And Father Tom said for him it was like this profound lesson through the witness of those sisters who were deeply rooted in a life of prayer, people of the Eucharist, and not even that earthquake seemed to shake them. And I was talking to the sisters myself those days about their experience, and unlike most other people I was talking to in Haiti at that point, they didn't seem traumatized. They talked about the experience very matter-of-factly, and I said to them at one point, were you never scared at all? And they said to me, yeah, we were scared at one point. They said after the main earthquake, the next day there was these terrible after tremors, and there was a moment when we thought the house was going to collapse on the children we care for. There's about 50 disabled children in their care. And they said in terror they ran into their little chapel and fell on their knees in front of Jesus in the tabernacle and started to beg him that he would save their children. And the earth continued to shake under their feet, and as they prayed and pleaded with our Lord, they said the statue of Our Lady in the corner of the chapel to the right of the tabernacle began to move as the earth shook, and the statue turned until Our Lady was facing the tabernacle as well. And they said at that moment the shaking stopped. Everything was still. And at that point in the story, when they were telling me, they began crying. They said to me, they knew at that moment that Our Lady was with them, pleading with her son, and they believed it was a miracle. So do I, actually. But that's not really the reason I told you the story, the miracle. The reason really was those amazing sisters and their faith, that not even an earthquake seemed to be able to shake. I would love to be like them. I want to be like them one day, and I know the way to do that is to spend more time with our Lord, particularly with our Lord in the Blessed Sacrament. I just see over and over again how things change when people do that, how people change. Just one last thought in this little time we have together, just about the sacrament in their chapel. It wouldn't have been there, the Blessed Sacrament, if it hadn't been for Father Tom and his decision to serve the people in Haiti, if it wasn't for his yes to his own vocation. I remember it was exactly 8 years ago today. I remember because it was Our Lady's birthday. I was in Somalia. It was a terrible time of famine and of war there. And for a short time in Somalia, there were no priests there, no mass, no sacraments. And I remember being very scared those days in Somalia for different reasons, but I think especially because I was aware of that. And I allowed myself to think for a little time when I was there about what the world would feel like if there was no church, if there were no sacraments. It was a horrible thing to think about. And we know, thank God, that will never happen. Our church will always prevail, even despite us. But it did lead me to think how often I take our church for granted, especially the sacraments, especially the gift of the Blessed Sacrament, of the altar. And I suppose more than anything, I just felt guilty about so often taking our priests for granted. And I think I just want to end by just asking all of us, please never, ever to take our priests for granted, especially in difficult times. Let's let them know how much we appreciate them, how much we depend on them. Thank you, all our priests, all our bishops, all our shepherds, for saying yes, for allowing us to have this gift of the Blessed Sacrament, that gift that can change us, that makes us become people that really know that everyone in this world is our brothers and sisters. Make us become people that won't accept that any child in this world this day will go without food, in this world of plenty, in this world that God gives all of us enough to eat. So please pray for this work of Mary's Meals, that those children still waiting today for food, that we might reach them soon, that they too might receive their daily bread. Thank you.